Hey guys, 105 Vapor here from CVW-11 VF41 Tomcats. Today I'm going over the Sin City Visual 03 left and right approach into Nellis Air Force Base. This is a visual approach, not an IFR approach. It can get confusing at times, but we'll get you through it. A little background on me, 14 years in the military, Navy. I was an aviation electrician. A couple of years working on Tomcats before they retired them. Got out to become a real life pilot. I'm currently private, instrument, and commercial rated, currently going through the CFI process. Hopefully have that done in a couple months on my way to the airlines. So without further ado, let's get going. All right, welcome back. As we can see here, we have our Sin City visual approach plate pulled up. This is similar, if not the actual real one that we have in real life. So let's go through a few basics of an approach plate first. Obviously at the top, we have the title of the approach here. That changes with whatever the approach is. You'll see that change. Over to the right, we see the airport we have the approach plate to and the city. Below that, we have all of our necessary frequencies. Obviously, these will be a little different in DCS, but for real life, these would be the frequencies that you use for conducting this approach. Next thing we will go through is the minimum safe altitudes or minimum sector altitudes. I have to look it up, refresh my memory. But basically, this tells you what MSL you need to be at in a certain section from the TACAN, or VOR as we use in real life in the civilian world, what MSL you need to be at to clear any obstacles within 1,000 foot or 2,000 feet for mountainous areas. But you can see different radials coming out of it. Basically, headings you're on, like for instance 190. So you're heading 190 to the TACAN, or this one you're heading 070. So in between those headings, you need to be at 11,200 feet to clear any obstacles within 25 nautical miles of said TACAN. And it's the same for these different slices of the pie here. Sometimes you'll see them with no arrows on them, and it'll give you an altitude. That'll just mean within 25 miles, any direction, you have to be at this altitude to clear any obstacles. Another thing to note in real life for these kind of approaches, you're going to be vectored, different headings and stuff, but for DCS, if you don't have an air traffic controller working you're pretty much going to be doing this by the chart. So getting started, on the left side of the approach, we have pretty much the turn in onto the 277 radial off of the TACAN at Nellis. So pretty much think of it shoots out a signal at 360 degrees. Each of those is a radial that you can tune in and follow on your Tomcat. And it's all about centering the needle, and we'll get into that later when we actually fly this approach. But yeah, 360 degree signal goes out, tune into a certain radial you want, and follow it in. So for this one, being that it's 277, we're going to start our turn, and we want to intercept it at about 12 DME. You see this 12 right here with the arrow, looks like a D. That's 12 miles, and you'll see that in your BDHI from the Nellis TACAN. So that's your DME, distance measuring equipment. It's a little slant term for radio net aid to navigation that gives you distance from said station. So we're 12 DME from the Nellis TACAN at this point. And this intersection is called Hazel. You can see that right here under here. Here's your annotation for the intersection. Another thing to note, just before we get any further in this, is obstacles. You see this up here. You see a couple triangles with 3144. This is a little different than a civilian one. I'm not sure if this is MSL or AGL on this, but in a civilian one, it'll show you MSL on top and AGL on the bottom. Basically, that's the altitude you need to be at to clear that. I'm not sure. I'm assuming that this is MSL because, you know, a 3,000 foot tower would be insane. Another thing is visual references to things. It does have some visual identifiers. You can see here you got a golf course. The Clark County shooting range is right here. Uh, we have some airspace here. This is the Las Vegas Delta airspace for McCarran. Really don't need to worry about that in DCS as civilian traffic is kind of limited. Another couple things, we got highways here that we can see. Obviously, this is the strip going through here. Here's the city outline. Casino to note here. Industrial park notes are turned into Nellis, but just an overall um, kind of rundown of some things on this chart. Another thing up here, radar required. Now you're thinking, oh, maybe I need radar in my airplane. No, that's radar required on an approach chart means that you have to be under radar control from approach. That's they have you squawking a certain code. I'm speaking for the civilian world, but they got you squawking a certain transponder code, and you're under their radar control. So let's go with another one here. We have the weather minimums. This is laid out a little different than a civilian chart, but again, this is a military chart, so I'm doing the best I can here, but I'm trying to explain. We got minimums for this approach. It's a visual approach. This is not an instrument approach, although we're using an instrument. So we have minimums for this approach. We have 4,100 foot ceilings and 6 miles of visibility. IFR approaches, they'll be a lot less than that. They'll be in the hundreds of feet and, 1 mile visibility on some of them. And the weather is based on the current Nellis weather. The ATIS will be telling you what the current weather is there so you can determine whether or not you meet the requirements to do this approach. Anyway, moving along. So we've done our turn and we've started our turn, and at the top you can see 250 knots indicated or less recommended, no later than Hazel. So right around this point where you're getting ready to turn, and you want to make sure your aircraft is slowed down and pretty much, below this speed. You can dirty up, but then you got to worry about blocking the traffic if there's any behind you doing this approach. So it's best to keep it kind of quick until I'd say probably you get about halfway to this Aliente or whatever it is casino. Dirty up right about there, because you see you got 12 DME. The next intersection is going to be your Ande. One other thing I didn't touch on that I just need to do right now is under it you see a number. That's the MSL you want to be at when you hit that intersection. Not after it, not before, but kind of as you hit it. A couple miles before is fine, just so you can get established. So in between Hazel and Ande, you have about 6 miles to get down to 5,000 feet. You kind of want to plan that descent. Depends on your ground speed. There's all kinds of factors in it, but I'm not going to overcomplicate this. We'll keep it simple. So just know to be, once you hit Ande at the 6 DME, so you see that coming up on your BDHI of maybe you're at 8. You probably want to start descending to get down to 5,000. You don't want to make a crazy descent, 4,000 feet per minute. You want a nice smooth transition in between 6,500 and 5,000. So once we get down to 5,000, we're at the Ande intersection. We're getting close to our 4 DME. So, and we can see here that it has a 4 DME arc for this approach. I will touch on this in the flight video, but basically all you need to know is it's 4 miles from the DME that you're going to be doing this arc. And once it turns you onto it, you'll see this industrial park, which we'll see in the game. But sorry, sim. But once you see that, that's kind of your visual indication that you should start your turn on the final. I've done it a couple times in the sim, and it overshoots the runway a little bit, just the way Nevada's laid out, I guess. But it should, and it says right here, this procedure results in a final approach segment of approximately 2.5 nautical miles. So you'll be on a 2.5 nautical mile final into Nellis, where you can choose 3 left or right. I usually use right because it's not that much of an overshoot. And as you can see here, we have our Nellis TACAN identifier here, what channel it's on. I believe it's 12 X-ray in the game. and the identifier for it is LSV. And these dots and dashes over here are the Morse code you'll hear. If you tune into that TACAN and you turn your volume up, you should hear it along these lines. That's how you identify the station. But again, keeping it simple, we'll just roll with it. And again, you see some obstacles here, highway and whatnot. One more thing to note is the emergency safe altitude in this area, 100 miles from said TACAN is 14,000 feet. That's going to keep you clear of terrain, obstacles, etc., etc. The stuff on the bottom is really ATC stuff and couple special instructions. The first two are ATC related. We won't really get into those. The last one, continual visual descent in right turn to join LSV TACAN 4 DME Arc until extended final runway 03. Make base turn to remain within 4 DME to protect against Las Vegas approach airspace traffic. Tower will assign your runway. So what they're getting at here is they want to keep you clear of McCarran's airspace because all this is really close. And it's kind of a juggling maneuver for ATC. So last thing is the effective date of the chart. This really doesn't apply to us, but just some FYI. You can see on the side here we got some dates. That's your valid date of, the dates that this approach plate is valid. So if you're past this date, it's no good anymore. There could be changes to it. Make sure you have the up-to-date chart for if you're flying in real life. But for this, we're just going to use this one. So without further ado, we'll get to flying this approach and we'll see how we do. Okay, here we are in the cockpit of our Tomcat getting set up for the approach. You can see we're at 16 DME from the radial we need to intercept, which is the 097. If you recall back, let me pause this a second. Back on the approach plate we had a 277 radial coming from the TACAN. Well, being that that's going away from the TACAN, if we followed the 277, if we went to that heading, we'd obviously be flying away from Nellis. That's off to the west. So what we do is we tune the reciprocal heading, which is 097, subtract 200, add 20. That gives us 097. So we'll be following the 097 radial into Nellis for the 4 DME arc. And if you recall, 6,500 feet at 12 DME is our entrance point for this approach. Go ahead and minimize that. Back to our video here. So right now, all we're doing is we're intercepting our radial. Can't really see it because the stick's in the way, but the deviation bar is off to the right. A good way to track your radial in as the needle's coming in, or the deviation needle, is the diamond at the top of the HSI. Match that with the top of the deviation needle and follow it in with a turn. Keep that diamond on top of the deviation needle till it's center. That'll get you pretty well in the ballpark for intercepting the 097 radial, or whatever. It works for any radial. So right now we're just flying our approach in. You can see we're at 12.2 DME, and we're just about established on that inbound course. Minor corrections. We don't have an extreme deviation on our needle. So an important thing to note here too is not to chase the needle. It's a beautiful Tomcat, but don't chase the needle. Use small inputs to kind of get in the ballpark where it needs to be. If you end up trying to chase the needle, it's just going to be like chasing the drogue at the tanker. You're going to be all over the place, fishtailing, trying to get on the course. Just let the needle come to you. Small differences in heading will prove some results for you. You see it moving off to the left here. So I just make a minor correction to the left to catch it. It's all about precision control with this kind of thing. I mean, even though my precision control doesn't look too precision in this video, but the Tomcat's only been out less than a week, so Still learning the ins and outs, but doing the best I could while instrument flying it. I think I did pretty good considering. And then obviously, you know, you'll see some deviations in altitude and whatnot. I tried to keep it a little above 4,000, but that goes to and from throughout the course of this. But maybe I was a little fixated on the VDH. I don't know, but stayed in the ballpark. So we can see we're on our course here. We've just hit about the 5 DME from Vegas, or from Nellis rather, the TACAN. You can see I'm kind of just trying to track inbound, making small corrections. I made a sudden one there to get us back on course because we caught the needle. Coming up on the 4 DME, so I'm starting my turn in. Let's talk about the BDHI and the positions we need to follow for the DME arc. We can see the needle is pointing straight to the station at this point, as indicated right there. Now what we want to do, we want to move it over to the 9 o'clock position. So we're going to make a right turn till that BDHI needle's on the 9 o'clock position. That'll have us pretty well established on the 4 DME. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move that BDHI needle about 10 degrees in front of the 9 o'clock marker. And then we're going to level out. Once we level out, we're going to let that BDHI needle travel counterclockwise to the, call it 8:30 position, right behind the 9 o'clock marker. And we're going to rinse and repeat the entire process for the DME arc. 10 degrees in front, let it travel 10 degrees behind, left turn. 10 in front, 10 behind, left turn, till it's 10 degrees in front again. I'm going to show you some errors in this arc. First set is going to be we're too close to the TACAN station and how to fix that. And then on the second half of the 360, it's going to be too far, and we're going to show you how to fix that. And then we'll do a landing at Nellis and we'll call it a day. So here we go. We can see I'm moving that BDHI needle over to the 9 o'clock position. And for some reason, the standby attitude indicator, as you can see, wasn't working in the recording. So not sure if that's a bug or what, but we won't worry too much about that. We got the VDI right there. Okay, so we see we're at 3.6. We got a little close, and we got the BDHI needles at 9 o'clock. So I'm going to hold it, pretty much hold my heading right now until I get back established on the 4 DME. So we just fly straight and level until we get to 4 DME. And the corrections take a while. Nothing happens fast with this. We're pretty close to the station and we're pretty slow, so bear with it. But we can see the distance already starting to come out. 3.8, 3.9. We're coming up on 4, and we can see the BDHI is about 20 degrees behind the 9 o'clock position. So let's roll to the left and get it 10 degrees in front of the 9 o'clock marker. Yeah, right about there. Level out. Okay, 4 DME, you can see the needles moving to the 8:30 position. We're roughly 10 degrees behind the 9 o'clock marker. There it is. We'll start another turn. Okay, roughly 10 degrees, give or take. 4 DME is still in there, as you can see. We see we're still at our 4 DME. Let's level out. Not the most exciting flying in the Tomcat, but if you guys are wondering how to do certain procedures, yeah, I'm happy to cover them. So see, we got a little close there. We're at 3.9. So what we're going to do is, all right, 3.8, see the distance is closing it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to stay straight and level. We're not going to turn. Just let the BDHI needle travel behind the 9 o'clock position, and don't start your turn. Just keep straight and level till you see that distance coming back out to 4. So we're at 3.8, straight and level. Let it keep coming out. There's 3.9. And it's gonna, the further you go, the faster it's gonna get, because you're further away from the tack in at a different angle to it. So it's gonna start happening a little faster the further you get out. There's 4. Start our turn back in, get that BDHI needle about 10 degrees in front of the 9 o'clock marker. Okay, same thing here, 3.9, hold her steady. All while trying to stay coordinated and on angle of attack. So see, we got a little close again, so we're just going to hold this heading. Let's see, now it's off our left there at about 4 miles, give or take.
There's a friendly, 10 o'clock, 4 miles.
Okay, maintaining this heading until we get back to 4. Okay, there's 4. Started my turn a little early just to anticipate the change. I want to overshoot it. So BDHI needle,
Friendly,
10 degrees
Century,
in front of
10
where we
o'clock, 3 miles.
Okay, again, we undershot it, so hold this heading. Nellis. Okay, there's 4. And you can see the BDHI needle's 10 degrees in front of the 9 o'clock position. Now, coming up, I'm going to overshoot it, and we're going to get a little far from it, and we're going to show you how to close the distance. It's pretty much just the opposite of what we've been doing, letting it travel behind us. Instead, we're going to overshoot the 10 degrees to about 20 to 30. It's pretty much ballpark. You just need to kind of figure out what works best. So, yeah, about 20 to 30 degrees ahead of the 9 o'clock marker. And let it come back 10 degrees. Once it comes back 10 degrees, turn in again another 10 degrees, and just repeat the process till you get back established on your DME arc of 4 nautical miles. So you can see we started, there's 4.1. So there's about 20 degrees or so, maybe 15. I think I didn't turn enough here, but you'll see it get corrected here. Okay. Still going out. Okay, so let's turn a little more. You see now we're at 4.3, so let's bring it 20 left. There we go, leveled out at 20 degrees. And you can see the VDHI needle slowly move into the 9 o'clock position. We're going to keep it ahead of that 10 degrees, remember, so okay, started my turn a little late, but that's okay, we'll just put in some more turn. Okay. But you can see the general principle here. We haven't gone over half a nautical mile past our arc where we're supposed to be. So it works, it's just, it takes practice. And like I said, the Tomcat's only been out for a few days, and I just started practicing this yesterday, so it's not the most precise flying, but it gets the point across of how to do this, and it just takes practice. You can see we still got Nellis there. And we see our distance closing in almost to 4. This Tomcat looks great. Had to put that in there. Thanks, Heapler. Okay, we're back on our 4 DME. So I want to have 10 degrees in front of the 9 o'clock position again. I purposely extended past the industrial yard just so we could lose some of this altitude. Don't critique my landing portion of this, but this is just pretty much intercepting radial and DME arc presentation. DME. Here I'm dropping some altitude here so we can get lined up for the approach. Still at 4 DME. You can see our little industrial yard. That's is referenced in the chart there. Obviously I'm overshooting it a little bit just so lose some of that altitude I had.
feet, 300, 200,
'And touchdown, safe on the ground. So what we'll do now, we'll go ahead and look at accelerated TAC view. We'll time compress it so I don't take too much more of your time if you're still watching. So that was the flight portion. Let's skip over to the TAC view.